Hey folks, Paul Abernathy here. Welcome to another episode at Mastering the NEC. Today we're going to be talking about what makes our Fast Trax program a little different when it comes to solidifying the learning process to folks out there trying to learn the NEC. And kind of show you one of the core reasons why I think our program is far superior. Now, I'm not knocking people because code is code. Our content is code. We're not creative here in a sense that we're creating things out of the ether. This is all based on the National Electrical Code. The FastTrack system is what we are selling. It is a comprehensive way to learn the NEC. You can learn the NEC by just looking at the code book. It's tougher because it's not structured. So what we did was we take a well-known published document purposely and turn it into an exam prep program with guidance on how to follow the program, how to move in and out of the program into your code book. We incorporate how you can ask us questions using Fast Trax Interact. All of this stuff is what makes up the Fast Track system. And it's so important because when you're going through the learning process when it comes to the National Electrical Code, you can get extremely overwhelmed. So we wanted to break it down in a way that when you see something you don't understand, if you're in the 2020 or the 2023 edition of our exam prep programs, you can now use a product called Fast Trax Interact to ask us questions directly while you're in the program. And you can come back and see what the answer is. Other students can chime in as well that are in the same program that you are in. Now, this is not available in the 2017 edition, and it's not available on any of our other products. It's only available on our Fast Trax exam prep for the 2020 and 2023, both the basic and the enhanced program. Okay, let's get that out of the way. But regardless of the program you're in of ours, we use things like chevrons to pull you in and out of the National Electrical Code. We use great illustrations, and you have the ability to ask us questions. In fact, if you're in the 2017 or any of our other programs, you can also use paulabernathy.com. Just let us know that you're a student and submit your question, and you will come to the top of the list. So essentially, it works the same. You're going to get your questions answered. And that's what it's all about, right? You buy a book here, buy a book off eBay, buy something. You're never going to talk to the people that wrote it. And you're certainly not going to talk to the educator who's teaching it. And so in our program, that's what you're getting. So that's part of the Fast Track system. Now, something else that sets our products extremely apart from others is how they're broken down. And let me give you an example. So one of the toughest things for folks to grasp is when they're doing single family dwellings, is they have a hard time grasping sizing of the neutral conductor. So I can walk you through how to size the ungrounded hot conductors following part 3. It's a standard method, we like to call it. It is actually the method to sizing other than the optional, which is in part 4. But when it comes to sizing the neutral, it has to also be sized based on part 3 because that's where the rules sit for it. Okay, so people say, well, I don't understand, but that's exactly where it sits in 220.61. So that's under part 3. So you don't get the luxury of using the optional method for sizing the neutral. Now, if you size it based on the optional method, the service or the feeder, and you want to size the grounded neutral conductor full size, then you don't need to know this process. But look, we're not in the market of giving away material. I don't want to make something larger than it needs to be. So I'm going to use all of the allowances of the NEC to size something properly. Not to mention, when you're doing an electrical exam, they want to make sure that you're sizing the best performance, the best possible outcome, which could be the smallest possible conductor that could be used. Okay? And you want to take advantage of all of the allowances that the National Electrical Code affords you. Okay? So when it comes to the neutral conductor, check this out, just so you kind of get an understanding of how our course works for those that are interested in it. So here we're looking at, you've already gone through this unit. You have calculated out the size of the ungrounded or the hot conductors. You've already done that using part 3 of Article 220. You've already done that. So now you know what the hot conductors are, but now you're going to size the neutral conductor. So what we like to do is, instead of going over the form again, we will say, well, you can use the form, or out in the margins, you could write down all of your neutral contributions at the end, the same time that you're doing it, and make it easy on yourself. But ultimately, as you see right here, in the previous calculation that we would have done for the hot conductors, we're going to use that information that we gathered in order to now size the neutral. We've already done the work. But the reason that I love our program so much is we don't rehash those things to cause confusion or waste a bunch of slides. So here you see that when it comes to the neutral, we basically take the same values that you got from the previous calculation, which you would have done if you were in Unit 8 of our Fast Trax program, and we would have broken it down piece by piece using a form so that you can really read it, look at it, see all the code references. That's so important to a structured program. And as you move through it, you would have seen, okay, this could be a neutral load, but it's also the hot conductors. So you have those margins. So what we've done here is we've kind of broken those things down. But in order to make it very clear in the program, we're not going to totally confuse you now. We're going to show you all the way down what items would be included in the neutral contribution when it comes to these set parameters that we give you in this lesson. All right, so for example, let's just look at it. So here's A, call out, and it says no neutral conductor is connected to the water heater in this calculation. All right, so if you go down here to A, you're going to see A right here, there's 0. Why is it 0? Because there is no neutral for a hot water heater, okay? So a traditional hot water heater, storage type hot water heater, you just got two ungrounded hot conductors, okay, and an equipment ground. So there's no neutral contribution to take into consideration, okay? The next thing would have been B. B says all fastened in place appliances utilizing a grounded conductor must be included. So if we go down and look at B, so these are all of the items that were included in our list of appliances. And we only wanted to include those things that are what? That have a grounded conductor. So anything in your list that would have been 120 volts or even 115 volts are going to have a neutral component. Now, here's where people get confused. If you remember back in the regular method under Part 3, standard method we like to call it, that when you have 4 or more fastened in place appliances, that you get to take a demand of what? 75%. So you would just add them all up, multiply it by 75%, and that's what you'd use, right? So the big question that people ask, like, okay, when I'm doing the neutral, do I do the same thing? And the answer is absolutely. If I've got 4 or more fastened in place appliances that have a neutral contribution, that would be any of them that are 120 or 215 in your list, okay, excluding all of those that are 240, okay? When it's talking about fastened in place appliances, and we're not talking about dryer or cooking, it's totally separate. We have rules for that separately. In our case here, you see there's a dishwasher, which is 120. You have an in-sink waste disposer. You had a trash compactor, and we had 3 separate attic fans, all of which are neutral contribution loads, okay? So we added all of them up. Now, if there was only 3 of them, the same way it was with sizing the hot conductor and the contribution of those fastened in place appliances when we did the lesson in Unit 8 for the hots, same with the neutral. If I have only 3, then I have to take them at full value. I don't get to apply any demand factor of 75%. But since I do have 4 or more, which is a dishwasher, disposer, trash compactor, and the 3 attic fans, which actually I have 3, 4, 5, 6 appliances here, then I obviously have 4 or more, then I get to apply the 75% demand factor. Now, where do you see that? It's right here in 220.53. Again, the importance in our program is that we're going to give you the code references right there. Okay? We're not just going to tell you to apply 75%. We're going to let you know where you go read it. What do? You stop, you go to the code book, you read it. What's important for me is you understand that this allowance for this demand factor, this applies to both the ungrounded conductor calculation as well as the neutral conductor calculation, okay? I used to always say what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if you can apply the demands to the ungrounded hot conductor sizing, then you most certainly can do it for the neutral conductor sizing, okay? All right, the next thing would be item number 3, okay? And again, this is gonna be the heat or the air conditioning. So let's go down here and see which one here, right here, C. And the heat, 0, air conditioning compressor, 0. Now you will notice something, folks, because I get this question all the time. I see the air handler, I see the condensing fan, which sits on top of the compressor outside unit, and then that. Why am I accounting for those? Because in the neutral calculation, at any given time, those neutral loads will be on, and so they have to be accounted for. So you're going to actually take those neutral loads into consideration. Absolutely. Now, the other question I get from people is, well, wait a minute, Paul. When I was sizing the ungrounded hot conductors using the standard method, that I had to compare heat versus AC, and whichever was larger, that's what I took. And if heat was larger than the AC, then I got rid of the AC's contribution and just went with the heat. And that meant that I would have lost the condensing fan, for example, right? That doesn't work that way for the neutral. You don't do a heat versus AC comparison. You're looking for all of the neutral contributions. So any of them in your list that is 120 or 115, depending on how they give it to you, that is a neutral load, and you have to take it into consideration. So this is why it didn't matter whether the heat was larger than the AC or vice versa when it came to the neutral. If I have the potential for a neutral contribution, I have to account for it. And so this air conditioning compressor didn't get put in here. The electric heat, which was 240 volts, didn't get put in here. But the air handler was 115. The condensing fan motor was 115 or 120. So they most certainly have to be added to the contribution for the neutral because they are legitimate neutral loads that'll be there. Okay, so that's why we'll go back up here to C. And that's why we're not accounting for the heat and air conditioning, but we are accounting for the other neutral contributions. Look at D. D says if the largest motor is 120 or 115 volts, use the motor load in line 14. Okay, so we're looking at D. So let's just kind of bring it back down here for D. Okay, so you see right here it says largest motor. Another misconception is that when you're doing the neutral, that you don't have to look for the largest motor. Well, certainly, the same way that we had to do this when sizing the hot conductors or the ungrounded conductors, we have to do that as well for the neutral or grounded conductor. We have to find the largest motor, but it's only the largest motor that has a neutral contribution, not just the largest motor, because obviously there may be an air conditioner compressor that is the largest motor, right? But remember, that doesn't have a neutral load. So we're going to be looking for the largest motor that has what? That has the neutral contribution, okay? Makes sense? Okay, so in our case, it would be the in-sink waste disposer. That is the one that's listed in here originally as a horsepower value. That is the largest motor. So I'm gonna take that 1127 and I'm gonna do what? I only want 25% of that. Now you might be saying, Paul, where did I get that 25%? Well, that comes from the requirements in 220.50 for the largest motor. And it sends you to 430.24, which says, look, if you got multiple motors, take the largest one at 125% and the sum of the others. Well, since we already took all the motors, we've already taken everything at 100% originally, okay? So I'm just following the rule in 220.50. I'm looking for that additional 25%. That's it. So that's how we get this 282. It is basically 25% of the in-sink waste disposer value. And that's all we're trying to do, because we're taking, as a neutral load, we're taking that in-sink waste disposer at 125%. Well, since we took it at 100, even though we did apply some additional demands to that, we took it at 100 originally, we just need to capture that additional 25%. And that's what goes right there. That makes sense? And it's the same thing we do when we're sizing the hot conductors, okay? We're looking for that motor that's going to give us the largest motor application. The only difference here is in the neutral, we're only looking for those that have a neutral contribution. When we're looking at the hots or the ungrounded conductor, we're looking at all the motors in question, okay? Regardless if it's 240 or 120. You get me? Okay. We're doing neutral, so don't get lost. All right, so there you go. There's that one. Now let's go to H. H says all numbers are shown in volt amperes. Let's see, where is that H? Oh, right here. So this right here, 21,247, that is VA. That's volt amperes, okay? Let's see, HI. I says since all the general lighting and receptacle loads have rated 120 volts, the total volt amperes from line 9, remember, it's all part of the calculation you've already done. I don't have line 9 to show you because that is what's used on our form when you did the standard calculation. All we're doing is pulling the information from that form now. And that's why we do it this way. So it's going to make more sense if you're in our program. And it says pull it from 9, okay? And it must include the neutral calculation. So if you look right here, see how it says 7,048? Okay, so where did we get this? Well, in the standard method, we did 3 VA per square foot, right? And then we took the 2 small appliance branch circuits at 1,500 VA each, right? 210.11, okay, got to know those rules. And then we took the laundry circuits at 1,500 VA each, added it all up, but we were able to apply a demand factor to that. And in that demand factor, it was the first 3,000 at 100%, the next 117,000 at 35%, and the remainder at 25%. Don't believe me? Okay, let's go to the code really quick. I'll take you here. We're in the code really quickly without resizing anything. I'll just do a little bit. Let's see if we can get it in here. Now we'll do it. I'll take you where it shows that really quickly because, again, I have people that sometimes don't believe me. And so let's go and take you where it's at. And in the 2023 edition, okay, we're going to be looking at right here. Let's see, let's go back right here. All right. So here you see it says for dwelling units, and this is the lighting loads, which actually also includes the general use receptacle loads, and it tells you that in the code, in case you didn't understand that. The first 3,000 at 100%, the next 117,000 or 3,001 to 120, we like to say next 117,000 over the 3,000 is at 35%, and that the remainder over that is at 25%. I think I got it backwards earlier, sorry. So it's 100%, then it's 3,001 to 120,000 at 35%, and the remainder at 25%, okay? Makes sense? And so you get to apply that even to the neutral, okay? So that's the part I think that a lot of times people lose sight of. If I can apply those demands to the hot ungrounded conductor, I most certainly get to apply this to the neutral. And all of those general lighting, all those general use receptacles, all of those small appliance and laundry, all of those have a neutral contribution. So that's why I use the same value here that I used on my calculation form that I did when I did the standard method, okay? And if you're saying, Paul, it's so nice to see that form and how you fill it out, well, guess what? You're not gonna see it in this video. You're gonna have to go either watch our videos over on Fast Trax Tube, or you're gonna have to get into the Fast Trax program and we break it down and show you this form. You download the form, we make it easy peasy, and you can learn it step by step by step, okay? All right, let's keep going. The next one we're looking at is J, is the appliances, and we already looked at that. K. Now, K applies to the clothes dryer, which is the value from line 11 on original calculation. Okay, so we did a calculation using 220.54. All right, and so we did that, and here it says that we're allowed to apply another demand of 70% to that value that we calculated doing the standard method. And we get those rules from 220.61b. It says right in those rules that I can take an additional demand based on the demand we just did in 220.54 to come up with the dryer loads. I can take another demand, and that is the 70%. And so if you go down here and look at K right here, you're going to see that the original value that was in line 11 of our original calculation when sizing the ungrounded hots, that we took it at what? we took it at 70%, and that's where the 3,850 came from. And of course, L is exactly the same thing, using 220.61b again, and that is for our cooking appliances, which gives us the ability to take another additional demand factor, in this case 70%. So you see that we're using the math that we did under the standard method in part 3 to be able to size the neutral. Why? Because the neutral sizing falls under part 3, not under part 4 for optional. Okay? And all that makes sense. And of course, we can go down the list. M, since both of these motors right here, so this is the air handler and this is the condensing fan, okay? Both of those motors have to be taken into consideration, okay? Both of those are also energized simultaneously, okay? And they both will be offering to the total neutral load. So we're taking both of those into consideration. N is the total summation. So we added up this value. We added here the value after the 75% for the appliances is this value, this value, this value, and these values. And we got 21,249. And that's what it does. You divide that by 240. And here you'll see that ultimately that comes up with 89 amperes. And then again, this is so important. Inside of our form, so this is line 19 from the form, folks. Look at the references in here. We have code references in here in order to help guide you to where you need to start this journey. Because you know what? If this service, we're doing a service, if this service falls between 100 and 400 amps, then I have the ability to use 310.12. Okay, which is the people refer to as the 83% rule. But there's a specific requirement in D. So I have to make sure that I can handle the calculated load, whatever the neutral load is that we just calculated, which was 89 amps. And it also reminds us that it cannot be smaller than what's in 250.24D1, which ultimately sends us to 250.102C1. So that's a minimum size. But we still have to have the sizing to handle what? Our calculated grounded neutral conductors load. Okay, we walk you through all of this in our program. This is just kind of a quick overview. And here you see that we'll talk about the temperature rating and the size if it's copper versus aluminum. And of course, we'll send you to table 31016 as well. All of these things are so critically important for you to understand the NEC. And that's why we break it down. So this was an example of how we don't re-go over the form again. You already did it. You already done the hard work. What we do is go over your results piece by piece so that you get a true understanding of how we're sizing this neutral, okay? So anyway, hopefully you got something out of this quick lesson. You know what? It's one of those things that you really may think you don't need to understand calculations, but you really do. You might get to the point in your career where you can look at something and say, that's a 200 or that's a 400 or whatnot. But you really do need to understand how to do these calculations. So I get questions all the time from people. Does our program, and we also put in videos and inject them, like for motor calculations, I put a video in there for you can watch that. And we incorporate it with questions. There's a question database we've included in there. There is specific videos for motors in that database. There's quizzes for motors in that database. There's so much that we put into our programs. That's why it's the system. It's not just code. We're not just using the NEC. There's elements that we bring together, okay? And we're using content that's established, and we've done that on purpose so that we can be objective in how we portray it and critical where we need to be. And what we do is we pull all those pieces together, and that's what creates the FastTrack system. All right, folks, hopefully you got something out of this. Till next time, stay safe. God bless.